Greetings all, Zen here. I hope everyone is doing well under the current circumstances. It's a bit of a shit fest for everyone. Although for me, not so much, apart from music and that sort of thing. But other than that, the isolation is perfectly fine with me. But today I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about the recent Forget Not vinyl that was done, a bit of the artwork, explain a few little things. I think some people would be a little interested in what goes into it and how we start with an idea and end up with a finished product. So we've done it. Obviously, we did the And Played Flowers Kaleidoscope vinyl single, which sold really well, and we've now done it recently for the Forget Not vinyl, as you would all pretty much know. Most of it's sold out so far, but there's a few kind of versions online here and there, but different kind of package configurations and whatnot, so it may require a little looking around, but I think there's a few here and there that you can actually pick up, so not entirely sure, waiting for some numbers. So hopefully that's actually sold out, but for those that haven't, hopefully not. But thank you very much for the feedback so far in regards to all the artwork. It's been quite overwhelming. I didn't kind of expect it, but the artwork itself, a lot went into it. However, it was one of the quickest artwork pieces that I've actually done before, so that was a little odd in terms of how quickly I actually got it done. So, but it was a nice surprise, and I'm glad everyone is enjoying the art. I'm actually wanting to do some, get a print for myself to hang up on the wall. It is in colour, I know, but at the same time I still need to feel somewhat accomplished in some of the art that I do. Where to start? So ultimately, I guess, in regards to when you come up with an idea, so we thought, because it's one of our main songs, I guess, like Plague, we thought it's a good idea to release this. I don't know if we'll do the other songs. I mean, we may, but I fear that those aren't as popular, and I guess not everyone would go down that route, and we do have albums to work on, so it's not our priority, but you know, we'll see what happens down the track. I'm just going to run through some of the various aspects of what goes into it. So from the art, the packaging, t-shirts, pennies that were involved, and yeah, ultimately the vinyl layout which you get. So starting with the art, so firstly you need a concept to start with, and the concept we had already, so I didn't have to think of that, so that's a blessing. So obviously it's based on the song Forget Not, which is, I guess, a celebration of the loved ones we've lost along the way. So ultimately death, as with most of the subject matter I touch upon, death is a common theme, so it's what makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Now so a few of you may know from many years ago we did a Forget Not t-shirt, and the t-shirt was based around a statue, a weeping statue. So that was quite a number of years ago we released that shirt. It's not available anymore, I don't think, or it may have been reissued. I have no idea. Tim does some weird shit. And so the statue itself was a statue which came from, well, it's a photo took in Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris. Now it's probably one of the most well-known cemeteries in the world. It's beautiful. It's got some of the most some very well-known people, so it's kind of in the heart of Paris. More kind of tombs, graves, so all the people that would be in it, people like Jim Morrison from The Doors, Frederick Chopin, composer, Oscar Wilde, for those that know their old literature, and Etienne Gaspard Robert. He was a Belgian physicist from memory. He helped develop concept of phantasmagoria, which is, I guess, what you would consider horror theatre in the early days. It's a well-kept cemetery, but at the same time, there's a lot of overgrown kind of graves and whatnot. So it looks unkept, but kept at the same time. So it's a very beautiful cemetery. And generally, every time I go to Paris or on tour there, I usually visit cemetery because it's always peaceful, especially when there's no tourists. So tourist season is not the best time to go because a lot of people flock there, but always worth a visit, so it's nice. The last time I went to Paris, or one of the last times I went to Paris, took some more photos of the specific statue, and ultimately I wanted to carry over that history that we had in terms of the visual theme. So I took some more photos of the statue and incorporated that into the art. So the initial idea for that was to have the statue, or the initial way to start it was to have the statue and then build around it. So to have almost like a not a shrine, but some sort of something anthemic around it, to almost like a celebration. And so the artwork itself, I was based around that, as you can see in the actual cover, which hopefully I'll put on the screen if it's not on there now, because I'm not great with technology, so we'll see if that happens. So as on the cover, you'll see it down the bottom, and then surrounding it is, I guess, a monument, different things that symbolize, and I like a lot of religious iconography, which I included in there. So what you'll see is basically, I didn't want it necessarily for this to be, because it needs to, it's still at the same time be representative of our artwork, so filled with darkness but also light. And so and the song itself it's a discussion of, or celebration of, the loved ones we've lost. So not to, you can mourn people, but at the same time celebrating their life and what they've achieved and how they've affected your life. And so I wanted to build around this central kind of sad theme as a celebration. And so around it you'll see statues of angels, a big gateway, a lot of sunlight. So when I refer to golden dreamscapes, hopefully I've remembered that right. You'll see all that light coming through the stained glass windows on the side of it. So I wanted to build on that. And so in terms of creating that, everything you see on the actual artwork itself is made up of photos from wherever it is. So whether it's photos I've taken, or you can get what are called stock photos, which you can buy certain licensing things to incorporate into your art if you want to. So there's a few different things if you want to, if you don't have access to, say for instance you want a particular antique leg of a desk or something like that, and you don't have that, you can search for those sorts of things and find it, and then use it in your art if you need to, or use certain elements of that, and then from that you can create what you want. So with this artwork, it's made up of primarily most of my photos and other kind of images which I've licensed to rip apart and then put together in another mass. So for those that know a lot of graphics, you may, or you probably, even if you don't know a lot of graphics, everyone probably knows what Photoshop is. So Photoshop is what I use 99% of the time for literally all my digital art. So it's a very good program, which I taught myself over the years. I've never gone to any sort of university school for art, and so this was something I learned over the years. The art, learning Photoshop, I started Photoshop with our very first, I think one of the first art things I worked on was the very first Nero flyer. Well, digital art I worked on was the very first Nero flyer, which is actually very tragic, which we might put online at some point, or I think Tim might have already. So yeah, the first flyer we did was absolutely horrendous, but it was a starting point, and you know, how many years later, I'm creating art which is a lot better. I'm still not entirely happy with what I do all the time, but it's a lot better than where I was, and so this is I guess it's been a good learning process over the years, is to learn the ins and outs of the program. I still don't know half of the functions, and I haven't needed to. You know, I may do things a long way in regards to it, because I don't know the full functionality of it. It's a very complex program with some things. However, you know, a lot of it's all trial and error, so I've had to teach myself a lot over the years to be able to do things. And so with the artwork itself, when you're creating a picture with Photoshop, you have what are called layers, and layers, you build a picture, I guess you could consider it upwards or outwards. So you can start with a base, and then you lay pictures on top, and you modify those pictures to create a whole picture, so you can blend different layers, change color, change shape. You can create all sorts of amazing things, and it's like a big vomit of images to create one image. And so with this particular Forget Not artwork, I think I got up to maybe 120 layers on the file itself. So obviously it's a very big file, and ends up about 2 gigabytes of data, which my poor machine hates me for. So, you know, you've got however many layers on top. So you have different layers of, you have so you may start with a black base. You may end up putting the statue on top, and then around that you'll put, say, a frame for the door, and then you'll put statues on top of the frame. Then you'll build on top of that you may build outwards with windows created, and then on top of the windows, you know, hourglasses or whatever I've put in there, and then frames around it, and then on top of that you would build the figure you see in the middle is just a figure that I built out of so many different layers. You have layers of all the framing around her mask. So you start with a female face. You build a mask. The mask itself is probably built out of 6 different layers, and well, actually probably about 20 different layers. So that's, yeah. And so on top of that, then you build the different layers of light, if you know, depending on what sort of light you want, and to the direction of the light which is going, and then you have to think about shadows and that sort of thing to create what you see at the end, which is the cover. So maybe in future, when I do an artwork, maybe for the next album, I'll create a piece of art, and I'll go through all the different layers which have been incorporated on top of each other to give a final result, and everyone can see how it's actually done. I'm not great at tutorials because I'm shit at technology, but gives you kind of I guess an insight as to what goes into the process. So that took quite a lot of time. So it's a little bit different in regards to painting. It's a lot quicker than painting, especially with oil paint. I get more instant results. However, it does end up being a little less satisfactory in terms of how you feel about it being an achievement, because ultimately it is photo manipulation, and so you'll see it everywhere. Every advertisement you see, every visual thing you pretty much see magazines, everything is being altered or edited in some way. So it's and that comes down to filters as well. You look at all these filters people use on Instagram and all that sort of thing to make themselves with smooth skin and age themselves or make them look younger. So all this is done digital technology, and it's amazing what you can actually do, and it's amazing how much people can lie. So it's a good and a bad thing. But if you want to create art, it's very beneficial. So creating the artwork, and so I had to, with the vinyl artwork itself, it's a double-sided booklet kind of vinyl, where you have the back and front, which you will see when we send it out to people, with an inside with all the lyrics from Forget Not throughout it. So basically, when I do a design, I'll work within certain guidelines. So you'll get specifications from whichever printing place, production place you're actually getting the vinyl produced at, and they give you a load as to these are the specifications and the dimensions of what you need to work within. So you work within however wide it is, where the fold lines are, and you have to visualize how it folds as to how you put the artwork together. So it includes your spine, your back and front, then your insides, and then the vinyl itself. You have to work within their guidelines, so you give certain guidelines to work with, certain bleed. Now, bleed, for those that don't know, when you produce art, is where where not to put in important information. So basically where they cut around. So you'll get 3 or 5 millimeter bleed line around it. So you need to make sure all your important artwork is within that bleed line. So your artwork needs to extend over that so they can cut, because not all cutting around the actual product is necessarily going to be to the millimeters. So it all needs to be very specific, and it's important to follow those guidelines, otherwise your artwork will look like shit at the end. And I've made mistakes in my very early days, but I've learnt very well, so which is good. Now, so the vinyl artwork, I don't have any physical product of that at the moment, because it's all getting produced currently, so I can't show you that. Maybe we will do an unboxing. Well, Tim will do an unboxing, because he looks a lot more excited when he does it as opposed to me, and he'll be able to show you things. Now, what else did we do? So the t-shirts and hoodies that we did as well, that's kind of, it's very similar. So you take certain elements of the artwork, you place them on a t-shirt within their sort of guidelines, whether you're doing digital print or you're doing screen printing, something like that, as to their specifications. If you're doing, say, screen printing, you might have to think about all the different layers of color which they go into in terms of printing it. Whereas digital print is very straightforward. However, the digital print sort of thing doesn't last long term. It's not as durable, I guess, as opposed to screen printing. So you've got to weigh up as to the level of detail you want. So if you're doing, say, screen printing a t-shirt, you need to think about all the different layers of color. The more layers of color that you use in screen printing, silk printing, whatever, the more expensive it's going to be. So if you can do a shirt with one color, say if it's just a white design shirt, that's amazingly cheap, and what everyone tries to do, but they fail miserably unless you're a black metal band. So if you want colors, it's going to be more expensive. Digital print is more expensive in general, because you can get as much detail as you want. However, the quality over time is generally not as good, but so all these different factors you need to take into account. So it's kind of a bit of a nightmare when you're going through the whole production process, weighing up your pros and cons as to how much money you're going to have to put into production, how much you're going to get back, how much you'll potentially make. So it's a bit of a nightmare. And what else? So the pennies are something I designed multiple times. I've never designed pennies before. I'll call them coins just for everyone's benefit. So what I refer to in the song lyrics as 2 penny moons. So with those in different, there's different beliefs in terms of how pennies were used. So you would put, pennies would be a toll to pay to the ferryman to cross the River Styx. So ultimately the border between life and death. If you didn't have something to pay the ferryman with, you'd be essentially wandering limbo forever. So in between the realms of life and death. And in some cultures it was, you put 2 pennies on the eye, so 1 on each eye, or you would put penny in the mouth, say on the tongue or under the tongue, depending. So either way, who cares, as long as he gets paid. So there's 2 pennies. The pennies kind of designed, obviously a reference to you know, the band name, and just a nice, I guess, antique looking window sort of design on one side, or keyhole as well. Now the design itself, I went through maybe 6 different edits in terms of getting it to a final kind of stage where, because I would make the design and give it to a company, because I don't use 3D art, I don't do 3D art, I'm not great at that sort of thing because I haven't practiced. But it's something I want to do in future because I like to control what I'm creating and I don't want to have to rely on people, so it's kind of a thing for me. So the pennies itself, so I had to do the design and give it to a company that would make the coins. So they would create a 3D image from the coins and ultimately produce them in whatever material that I wanted. So I went through so my initial design was probably a little too complex for something that's about 3.5 centimeters diameter. So what you would get in a kind of a large coin, I guess. But having not done this before, it's kind of hard for me to gauge as to how much detail I can use, how much detail will get lost, and ultimately weighing up between the two as to what the end result will look like. So I had to modify the design about maybe 6 times to get something that I wanted. So they created a coin in a 3D, I guess, presentation to me as to whether or not I could approve what it looked like. And finally I approved it, and they then created a mold, and then created the material that it was used from. I can't remember exactly what materials, nickel and something else, generally what a lot of coins will be made of anyway. So it will be weighted kind of very similar to a normal kind of coin. So it will feel quite substantial, not that you can actually use it for paying for anything, but yeah, so it'll be interesting. And then they put a stain on it, and so it gives it more of an antique feel. So I've yet to get those. They're actually ready at the moment. I'm just waiting for some details so we can ship them to the different merch companies, so the merch companies can ultimately ship them out when all the vinyl's done and that sort of thing. So trying to work on that on the side while doing the vinyl is a bit of a nightmare considering all the other things I'm doing, but this was a special project, so I got to kind of do what I want. However, the excess of color it's a change from all the things I normally do in my personal time, but you know, nonetheless, it gives me broadens my skill set, I guess. So it's so yes. So what else did we do? Let me check my list. We did t-shirts, pennies, vinyl layout, and then and we did the poster as well. So the poster is the full artwork. So on the vinyl itself is the primary kind of section of the art, and the poster itself is sort of a horizontal, what you would call a portrait angle or portrait view of the artwork. So it's tall. So I believe it's an A3 size, so it folds up and goes inside the vinyl. We were contemplating doing flags for that because I think that would look amazing on flags. And we may do that in the future, depending, but it's something that we kind of have to discuss first. And so maybe down the future we'll sell prints, I'm not sure. See how we go. Other things to think about, obviously. And so it gives you the full view of the artwork. So whenever I create a cover for an album or something, I'll create an artwork that's actually a lot more extensive to the actual, what you would call, say, a square cover. I'll either create an artwork which is wider or higher or whatever, and then I'll select visually what will work for an album cover in a square. So I have to kind of crop to what I would view and how I would like to see an album cover, what should be the focus, whereabouts the layout on the cover, everything should be, so it goes from logo, title, so everything needs to be thought about as to how visually pleasing it is, because there's some covers you can get which the logo will be in a different spot, it'll be hard to read, it'll be, the coloration of it will create an issue in regards to how it stands out. And you know, a lot of times with albums you want the logo to stand out, or if your logo is quite long, which is ours is terrible for putting on album covers and flyers because it's quite long and thin. So if you want it to stand on the flyer, it needs to go across the whole thing, otherwise it looks very small, because when you reduce something down keeping the same ratio, it looks terrible compared to other bands which have quite chunky logos, and regardless of what size you can fit it anywhere. And so everything needs to be thought about, and it's a complete pain in the ass sometimes with that logo. I've contemplated redesigning it. I didn't do the initial design of the Neo logo. That was another guy that lives in Queensland. It was designed many years ago, before I designed logos. I don't design logos anymore, but so the Neo logo wasn't actually designed by me, because I didn't want to have to put myself through that stress. But I thought about redesigning it over the years, but then I've given up, and you know, most people know it now, I guess. Well, that know the band know it. So I'm not entirely fussed about that. And so ultimately, when you have all these things together, so you have the vinyl, you have the pennies, you have the t-shirts, hoodies, and I think I said poster, whatever. Put it all together in a package, and you create different bundle options, which some people like hoodies, some people don't like hoodies, some people like t-shirts, or some people don't want t-shirts, they just want vinyl or post or whatever. And so you need to give people options, and so you need to then think about where you're going to sell this. So you'll have an Australian store, you have a European store, you have an American store, and you need to work out sometimes you need to work out in terms of what sizes will be ideal for certain stores. If you get them say t-shirts and stuff produced beforehand, which we used to do, which created a nightmare, but most stores it's pretty easy. You can order whatever size, and I'll print whatever size. And so you distribute everything out to all the different stores, and they then sell it to you. And the whole thing is a big nightmare to do in terms of from start to finish, but it's an enjoyable process. And Tim put a lot of hours into organising all the logistics of everything with all the companies. We did have a few setbacks in regards to the vinyl audio, which created more problems for me, because I had to create another side to the vinyl, because it'll be like a double-sided picture disc pretty much, which you will see for those that did get the picture disc vinyl. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes out. I'm sure it will be quite good. I'm looking forward to actually seeing the finished product. A lot of the times when we actually order, when we do an album or something like that, most of the time all the fans will see all the artwork, everything, or have their own copies before we even get to see it at all. Like, we'll get it months later. So any CDs you get, vinyls, you'll be getting it before the band does, because the band, ultimately most bands get their products last, so they don't actually know what they look like until people generally post them online. So it's an interesting process, but it's good. So yeah, in future, in terms of the artwork sort of side of things, in terms of creating, I might do a video run through of all, once I get my shit together and work out how to film it all. I know there's a way, but I haven't had the time to learn. Go through the process of all the different layers, and you'll be able to see it going into a format, and that format then gets sent off to the printer company, and the printer company print what you've created to whatever specifications they have. So it's a long process. You know, you just want to be a musician or an artist, but then you have all these other things you need to think about. Or you can pay other people to do them, but that costs money, and if we can do it ourselves, despite the stress, then that's fine. We get more control of the product in the end. So it's what we kind of wanted with Neo, to be able to control a lot of what we have. So the integrity stays the same throughout, and we have some sort of consistency with each kind of product that we do. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, obviously you can ask in our next Q&A. Tim and I will probably be doing one at some stage soon, but yeah, until then, stay safe, and we will talk to you soon.